Welcome to Lip Service for Contractors. Here you'll learn what moves the needle in your business. With your hosts, Brigham, the deep thinker, Josh, the $100 million contractor, Zach, the confused millennial, Laura, the foreigner. Lip service. It's not about dictatorship. It's about leadership. It's not about duplication. It's about innovation. It's not about stuff. It's about your people. Strap in and get ready for some lip service.
All right, we're back. Second podcast ever with Lip Service for Contractors. It is fantastic to be back with you guys today. You know, I am an avid trail runner. I love it. I love trail running. It's my favorite thing. Been doing it for years. And there was one time I had the opportunity to trail run with my son and his wrestling team. He's 13 years old. Bunch of kids came to this trail along with Coach Garcia, the head coach, which is an awesome guy, right? He used to wrestle as a collegiate wrestling, almost a champ. I'm sure he was or was not. I'm not sure, but he was extremely good, and he was still really athletic when we ran. Coach's sons began to taunt my son. They began to say things like, "Our dad can beat your dad." And I heard that. And what was supposed to be a good, fun, team-building event became a race between me and Coach Garcia. Why? Because I can trail run. Now, if we were get on a wrestling mat, he'd whoop me. But this is a trail, and I got this. So it was a race. It became a race. I jumped out in front, and I thought for sure that I was, going to smooth sail across the finish line. I don't know exactly where it was, but I was just going to keep running until he said, "Okay, we're done," right? And we go over a mountain and then back over the other side. Crazy thing. He was right there, right with me. In fact, he almost passed me, but I wouldn't let him, right? I thought to myself, look, he's going to have to work hard to pass me. I beat the guy by 30 seconds. He says, "All right, good enough," after about 5.5 miles. And after that, we stop, we look around, and the boys are nowhere to be found. I felt like I won for like a split second, but I quickly realized that I didn't win at all. In fact, it wasn't a race. It was about the kids and about my son. And who did I make it about? Well, I made it about me. You see, we find ourselves in moments. And if we don't recognize those moments for what they are, as well as our role in them, right? The thing that we can do to win that moment, well, then we're going to lose a whole lot of moments. And so as leaders, we're the ones that got to create this process. We've got to start this process. We need to be the ones who recognize and win the moments, especially in that situation. Very simple. All I needed to do was think about everybody, not just me, but them. All right. Instead of what's easy, you do what's right. And that's exactly what we're going to be talking about today in 60 seconds.
Chances are you love what you're hearing on Lip Service for Contractors. And if you want to go deeper, have an actionable playbook, or just want to learn from some of the most successful and profitable contractors in the industry, check out Clover Marketing from Josh and Laura. They give away free, amazing information, tools, SOPs, scripts, and processes that help their family business grow to over 140 million. And those same tools have helped other contractors in the industry blow up their business and grow an average of 20% every single year. Check out growwithclover.com/free gifts. They update the free gift section all the time, so make sure you keep coming back.
Power Selling Pros is the customer service coaching company for contractors. Their one-on-one coaching for CSRs helps contractors book at least 85% of their calls and wow more customers. And their group training for technicians helps you create a better buying experience in the home and close more sales. Visit powersellingpros.com to learn more about how you can make more money with their coaching programs.
All right. So it is all about recognizing and winning moments. I'm sure you guys can relate in one way or another. I'm sure you all win moments, right? You never lose a moment in your life. I'm the only one.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, no, this is that we're mostly here for you, Brigham.
Be present, Brigham. Come on, stop losing.
Lots of moral support. I'm feeling it right now.
It's winning moments. I have lost some. I have won some. let's relate this more directly to technicians.
Now let's hear some dirt.
To AC companies, right? To owners, to people listening to this. So when you say win moments, like that's a broad thought. Let's break it down, like specifics. Like when you say win the moment for an AC company, for the owner listening to this, what's a win the moment?
Oh, okay. Great question. Where do I start? All right, so let me give you an example. You and I talked about this last week. I got to be careful about this story, not naming any names, all right? Do not point fingers on this broadcast. But we have a client that was having a difficult time with his CSRs. And I know you asked, did they win the moment? But the only thing I can think of is when they lost the moment. So I'm going to go with where they lost the moment, and we can take it from there.
Fair enough.
So the CSRs weren't achieving their call booking rate goals. And so what he did one day is he decided, all right, I'm going to teach them a lesson. And one day they came to the CSR department. The CSRs came to the department and they had no chairs. That's right. The business owner took out all of their chairs. Now, in the back of his head, he was thinking, this is a great idea. When they don't make their goals, they don't get to sit down. They got to work for 8 hours, right? And so the back of your head, you're going, yeah, that doesn't make any sense. Why doesn't that make sense?
Why doesn't it make sense? Because they're certainly not going to be motivated to hit goals
or
now.
productive or whatever. Yeah.
Or loyal or stay there.
And Josh, you chat about this all the time. The most important meeting is the meeting after the meeting. The meeting after the meeting is going to be a horrific meeting if you take their chairs. Tell them about the meeting after the meeting really quick. I know it's kind of off tracking, but I think it's great.
It's off topic, but there's 2 meetings to every meeting. There's the one as a business owner or a manager you run and you're invited to, and that's where you get to input your ideas. And then there's the second meeting, which, by the way, is
where they talk about losing chairs.
Yeah, and the only meeting that matters, which is the one that happens in the parking lot or over the phone or wherever, where you're not invited. And that's where decisions are made on whether they're going to do this or not. That's the second meeting. And certainly you're not doing a good job of inspiring the second meeting if you're punishing them and and they're pissed off at you. They're talking about you. I guess that's good, but not that way.
Yeah, so there's certainly a second meeting going on. If you take their chairs, that second meeting in the parking lot or via text is going to occur, and it's not going to be pretty. We know that, okay? So the question is how do you salvage this moment? Can it be salvaged?
Yes, of course, anything can be salvaged.
Yeah.
It starts by incentivizing instead of punishing, right? Giving their chairs back and apologizing because that's ridiculous. I don't know that business owner, right? But it's not an ideal move in my opinion. Maybe it worked for him, not something I would do. But yeah, you have to change.
Standing desks are a thing now.
I don't think we're talking about standing desks. If it was everybody got a standing desk now, maybe this is a different conversation, right?
I can stand if I need to, yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Stand if I need to. But I was hoping to get at you guys maybe a moment that you lost similar to the one I shared, but you're all Mr. and Mrs. Perfect, which whatever, like for real.
I lose moments all the time. I don't remember. I don't think about them. That's the thing. You know
That's what I mean? Worse.
You don't look at your performance and go, geez, I could have done that better.
100%. 100%. However, I don't hold on to those things. And that's a decision I make purposely. It's like when I make a mistake, I always make adjustments right on the fly. I fix it as fast as I can, fix as quick as I realize. However, I don't keep things in that memory bank where I find that people who tend to do that tend to focus on the negative or talk in the past. And I don't want to be – I'm always cautious of people that are too negative or people that always talk about things that happened in the past because that means you're not living for today and the future. So I tend to – Laura could test this. Like if we have like an argument, she'll be like, give me an example. I'm like, I've got none. I just know
it's so annoying. So annoying. I'm like, okay, well, just give me an example. And he's like, I don't have any. And it's like, well, I don't know. That's great.
I always tell my kids that a wise man learns from his mistakes. A wiser man learns from other people's mistakes.
Yes.
And So the only intent of sharing something isn't necessarily to regurgitate a past transgression or what have you, but more than anything else, to share that as words of advice or wisdom to somebody else. Like, you know what? That was a moment that I didn't do so well in. I mean, we used the example earlier about the contractor that took chairs away. You know what? Does that make him a bad person? Of course not.
No,
Does that
no.
make him dumb? No. It's just one day where he lost that moment. And of course, you want to look at that just for what it is. It was a moment in time, no big deal. But how do we go about, number one, fixing the moment, correcting the moment? Well, the first thing we do is we recognize what we did or what happened was wrong, our bad, right? You always want to look in the mirror first. After you recognize, okay, what role did I play in this moment that was lost? You recognize that role, you admit to your team, you apologize. Of course, you give the chairs back, but in addition to that, you do exactly what Josh said before, and that is provide a solution that you create together. Guys, our booking rates aren't where they should be. How do we get them there together? And then you go over the very things we talked about in the first podcast, which is let's go over money, let's go over time, let's go over fulfillment, let's make sure that the promises that I've made to you are being kept. And then, of course, the promises that you've made to me are also being kept, right? The commitment that's involved there when it comes to keeping people on our team and keeping them happy and motivated and emotionally engaged in what we're doing. So yeah, learning from that.
Yeah. And I mean, so
Go
I
ahead.
think, I mean, we can name specific examples, but everybody has moments where they've screwed up both in their personal and business life. And when we talk about losing the moment, let's be clear about this. It's not making a mistake, because mistakes can be wins if we do it for the right reasons, right? If we're testing something, we're pushing something, we know it's a big risk, whatever, right? Winning the moment isn't necessarily about doing it perfectly, right? Or not tripping or stumbling the whole process through. It's really, winning the moment is going in with a clear purpose and understanding where you want to go, where you need to be, and then attacking that to the best of your ability. And then, of course, afterwards, like, how do you know if you win the moment? Like, let's measure, let's track. Now, not everything is numbers measurable, right? But everything is somewhat measurable.
Yeah.
And I think that's important to focus on too. Like, if you're winning the moment, like, let's use this specific example. Now, the chairs is a lose the moment, right? And I don't know that contractor. Maybe he thought it was a win, but it doesn't matter. I'm sure, and by the context of this conversation, he doesn't think that. But let's talk about win the moment, like a purposeful conversation, right? So a simple one, like you guys focus a ton on CSRs, answering the phone properly could be a winning the moment. And when I say answering the phone, that doesn't mean just like I picked up the phone within 3 rings, which is part of winning the moment, right? But creating that experience for the customer that not only sets that customer up to be happier, to feel appreciated, to show, not remorse, that's the wrong word, but like understand their situation, which is never a fun one when they're calling in. People don't call AC or plumbing companies because, they're excited about something's wrong. So there's an understanding going back and forth. But not only that, it set the CSR to do it better, to potentially cross-sell, to do, oh, by the way, sets the technician up better when they go into the house, sets that salesperson if it's the right fit, right? And it explores the whole experience with the customer all the way to getting a positive review and a referral, right? And it's all done in seconds sometimes, generally within minutes. And those are winning the moments, right? So, like, does that make sense? Are we following everybody?
Yeah. So to illustrate, what you're saying is, in the CSR case, for example, there are really 2 types of CSRs. Those who go through the motions, they pick up the phone, they answer it. They don't really take much thought for the experience that's being provided other than, I did my job, right? I did what I was supposed to. But then there's the CSRs who win the moment, who pick up the phone with intent. They give a positive greeting. They treat the customer with excellence. They set the company, themselves, and the technician up for success. Every piece of that interaction matters to them, and they give it their all every second. And that ultimately leads to long-term wins.
Yeah. So and this goes back to setting expectations too, right? Because that CSR's job is not to answer the phones.
Right.
Like, this is a more clear one that so many people have. A dispatcher. If you were to ask a dispatcher what their job is, 95% of them, maybe more, will say, my job is to make sure all the calls are run. All the calls on the board get run. And that's not their job. Their job is to maximize revenue, period, which means sometimes that you have to reschedule people. It means that you have to move people. It means that you have to have uncomfortable conversations sometimes, but you make it right with them, right? You don't leave that customer hanging. But that's a perfect example. Like winning the moment has to start with, I think, setting like what is your goal?
What does that look
is
like?
a win, right?
What does it mean for us? Yeah.
Exactly.
Also, like, I think if you win if the CSR answers the call with three rings, like you said, and they like win that moment, it's the start of you guys. It's the start of the business owner winning the customer. Like that's their first interaction they have with your company. And if it's a poor one, the CSR has lost their moment, and as a result, the business has lost that customer.
I mean, that's the first personal touch. The first moment is actually the marketing, and certainly you could screw it up there too. But a lot of people are better at that than answering the phones necessarily, because you could systematize marketing really easily and effectively. By the way, you can with CSRs to a point too.
Yeah. So definitely with marketing, there's a moment there, and it's a moment you got to win after the marketing has done its job. In other words, the phone begins to ring. Yes, now it's the CSR's moment where they can get on the phone and say, hey, the customer's going to say any number of things. Customers could say, hey, what do you charge for X? What do you charge for a pound of R22? And even in that situation, you've got to win that moment. So what do? Tell me more about your situation. How do you know you need R22? And then get them talking about the situation itself. Well, look, that's definitely something we can help you out with. When would you like us to come out? And you'd be surprised how often, just by taking care of their emotional need, showing them that you're listening, showing them that you care, reassuring them that they've called the right place, you're going to be able to win that business without even having to give a price.
You said something there, Brigham. You said something about, I think fulfillment of some kind. So essentially, my question is, what causes people to win moments? Like typically, what's like a common variable? For me, I think like positivity. If you can create like a positive culture where your employees are feeling fulfilled, as a result, they'll show up more positive, and they're in a way better state to win moments versus lose them. So that's kind of a question that I'll like throw out to all of you guys. What is like a common variable that contributes to people winning more moments?
Okay, so what you just touched on, positive, is a principle, right? It's a principle that we should definitely go over in detail, and we could use an entire podcast and talk about it.
Yeah, true.
There's reasons for that, but that's an example of a principle that we need to establish inside the organization, the culture thereof, so that they methodically handle it that way each time the phone rings. So each time the phone rings, we're going to exude, right? We're going to show that principle by the way we answer the phone. We're going to show them that we're listening. We're going to show them that we care. We're going to reassure them that they've called the right place. We're going to ask for the business. We're going to say, when would you like us to come out? We want them thinking about us coming out, which is why we should never be afraid of asking that question. So that's us winning that moment. Why? Because we're helping the customer feel like they're in control, and that they're being listened to, that they're being heard, that they're being reassured that they've called the right place, because at the end of the day, that's what they want. They want to know that they've called the right place. And now the same holds true with the technician. What's that? The third moment of truth, right? So you've got that 0 moment of truth with marketing. You've got the first moment of truth with the CSR, and then you've got this second moment of truth with the technician. And the last thing we want to do is set the wrong impression right out of the gate, right? You got to make sure you're parked in the right spot. You got to make sure that as soon as you get to the door that you go down a couple of steps, especially if you're a bigger individual, you want to go down a couple of steps, all these little tactics, right? You knock on the door, and there's arguments about whether hand out your card or hand, and look, it's COVID right now. So you don't want to do any of those things. You want to step a few feet back and say, hey, how's it going? Be very cordial and happy. And the last thing you want to do is say, okay, where is it? And you know exactly what I mean by that is where's the box? Don't do that, right? You're working with people, and you got to fix people before you fix things. And so that's our goal there. That's our objective, is to take every moment for what it is. It's a moment. It's a moment that if you handle correctly, you're going to win it. And the price, it doesn't matter that much if you win it. And you not being able to get it done today versus tomorrow, it doesn't matter that much if they like you, if you've won that moment. So so that's the goal. That's the objective with each moment that you go in to win it. But it has to be something that's built in through principles. And we could talk a little bit more about that in a minute, but it seemed like you had a thought there, Josh.
Yeah. So I want I always try to do this and make a point of this. There's things that I think and you think that we've just become habit to, right? But not everyone has this same concept, or really, more importantly, implements this concept, right? What you're talking about is really the customer journey. And you're talking about like winning the moments within the customer journey. None of this works if you haven't defined what the ideal perfect customer journey is. Like we do we have something called the anatomy of a perfect service call, the anatomy of a perfect phone call, the anatomy of a perfect follow-up. Like if you're not defining exactly what the perfect situation is, what you want to happen every time, the ideal time, then there's no goal to strive to.
Then anything's acceptable.
To a point. It's just like tracking. Yeah. Like, if you don't have a goal for a number, then any number is good enough.
So super quick about Josh winning a moment. Yesterday, a tech came out to our house. And as a tech came out to our house, he did his thing. He was an electrician. He came out to his house, did his thing. Awesome guy from Parker and Sons. And I'm sure many of the listeners know we sell a product called Jam Sessions. And one of our ads that we're running is helping people pick up more tech. One of our Jam Sessions is helping people pick up more tech. So we thought
retention. We do like a super deep dive, super tactical.
Yeah, so we thought we'd be smart and we'd put a tech up over our back and say, need to pick up more techs. So we asked this guy came out and he totally just thought he was doing electrical work, and we totally had to sell him on this idea of Josh putting this 300-pound guy over his shoulder.
Yeah, he's not a small dude.
He's not a small dude, lovely guy. And then he was we picked him up and we just had such a fun moment.
I was literally wrestling.
It was so funny.
I just straight up, he knocked on the door. I opened the door and Laura's filming from behind him, right? And I straight up just double leg him and start walking. And when we were talking about this idea, I'm like, it's been a long time since I just double legged and picked up a guy and walked 30 feet. And then worse, right? So we get out to the truck and she wants to take still shots for ads too. So she's walking around taking pictures and I'm holding this guy for a minute and a half, 2 minutes. I'm like, I can't hold, I got it.
And he's just hanging over Josh.
You need to be done right now.
He's just sweltering hot, hanging over Josh's shoulder. And then he's such a good sport. He got off Josh's back and he was like, I need to send these to my wife. He just got back into his truck and drove off, utterly shocked.
Well, that was a winning moment.
Well, that was a big moment.
We created an opportunity out of nothing, and that's also potential.
That's another thing that you've just sparked off. Winning moments. I think if you win moments, you tend to be present, and when you tend to be present, you see opportunity that you wouldn't otherwise.
That's right.
So even elaborate that on a little bit, Brigham. I'm sure you facilitated. I know you facilitate winning moments for so many companies across the United States, and because you fulfilled people winning moments, I'm sure the results you've achieved are people seeing more opportunity, and even listening more. And the better listener you are, you again hear more opportunity and engage in creating better relationships, which again is the cornerstone of every success story.
It's excellent. And listening is not forgetting to listen is another principle, in addition to positive that you mentioned without even realizing that you mentioned it, and recognizing these principles for what they are. As part of the customer journey, because yes, tact, as far as tact is concerned, you can map out each part of that journey. But if you don't understand the why behind all of those tactics, you're probably not going to consistently do them. Why? Because it's exhausting. And so the first thing we need to do is establish as a company, right, a culture. And the way that we establish that culture is we have a set of principles that we all agree to adhere to. Being positive, not forgetting to listen, those are all principles. Now, what's a principle? A principle is a truth. Now, when I use the word truth, I've first got to explain what truth means. Now, the reason why I need to do this is because the definition's been hijacked. People may say these days that this is my truth, and my truth may differ from your truth, and that's okay. But what they're really saying is that this is my belief. You see, you're entitled to your belief, and I'm entitled to my belief, and they may differ, and that's okay. We're entitled to that. However, truth has been around long before we were born. It's going to be around long after we're gone. All right? It's let me give you an example. Let's say that it's my truth, right? I say it's my truth that when I plant an apple seed and I give it plenty of water, it's in great soil, it's got a lot of sun, that one day I'm going to have a beautiful peach tree. Now, that may be fine and good, but you know and I know that when you plant an apple seed, you're going to get an apple tree. And that's truth. You see, we don't create truth. We merely discover it. Let me give you another example. Let's say that a heart surgeon wants to do some heart surgery. And what they do is they take potassium chloride, they push it through the main artery. And every time without fail, it stops the heart. And let's say that after that heart surgery, we want to start the heart again, right? Because that's the whole point. We take sodium potassium concentrate, we push it through the main artery, and crazy thing, without fail, it begins to pump again. You see, those aren't things that we've created. Those
Brigham has a side gig as a surgeon.
So
I was thinking, I'm like, that's a really specific detail.
Right.
Yeah, I didn't know that either.
So those are specific truths that we discover. We do not create them. The rules of flight. Flight has become the safest way to travel. Why? Because we discovered the laws of flight, foil and lift, and all the rest. We know how to get off the ground safely, know how to get back on the ground safely. It's a very powerful thing. Why? Because we discovered the truths that are involved. And so as an organization, we can create this culture by having a set of truths that we all agree to, that we all adhere to. And that's it. All the great thing about truth is that there's also a consequence. You get to choose to follow that truth or not, but you don't get to choose the consequence. In the back of your head, you're going, wow, I wish my kids were here. Well, yeah, it is about consequence as well. Why? Because it's attached. You don't control that. That consequence is going to occur whether you like it or not, whether you believe in it or not. It's going to occur because that's just the way it is. It's the nature of things. So they are natural, absolute laws. And so we need to discover those absolute laws, those truths, and we need to apply them in our organization. And that's what will motivate us more so than behavior, because how many books you study a day is irrelevant, because when you study a book, all it does is you're learning about behavior. How many diet books have you read and followed? Well, probably not many. Why? Because a study of behavior does not change behavior. It's not effective at that. However, a study of truth, along with its consequence answering the why behind the truth, is very effective at changing behavior. And that's why we teach truth in addition to the tactics in the customer journey.
And that's why we call Brigham the deep thinker of this podcast. He spent like 15 minutes to explain what truth is in a very defined, specific way.
There is something that you for sure got me thinking on even more. So values, huge part of a company culture. And
Yes.
if you can help people be like, if you can help ingrain what those values are into your team members and help them and they can then be more intentional about implementing them into their day and into their moments, then everything becomes more intentional.
That's right.
So I think we all have this desire to have values, to have a vision, to have a mission for our company. But I think because we don't live in the moment, we're just so caught up in the busy, we have this desire to have values, visions, and like an intentional culture, but we don't.
Well, here's what I find puzzling. I find it puzzling. Maybe Josh or Brigham, you guys could shed some light on this. I have a hard time finding a company that doesn't at least claim to have a mission and core values and these truths, these things that they hold on to and they believe in and they make a part of their life. Everybody has that, I feel like now. That's kind of like a rite of passage into business. But whether or not they do it is a whole other story. Why do you think it is so popular now for people to say they have those things, to give this lip service, but to not actually live it, to not really bring it to life?
So let me pull it back. Every company has culture. Every company has visions. Every company has beliefs, no matter what. Now, it may not be the culture, the vision, the belief, the goals that you want. Lots of companies say they want to do this, but really they're this, right? So having a mission statement written out, defining what your culture should look like and doing nothing, right, it's worse than not having it. Right. You know what I mean? At least not having it, you don't know that you're screwing it up, as weird as that sounds. But yeah, everybody, it's become like business, not business basics, because there's nothing basic about it, but it's like business 101. Everybody's got to have a mission statement. It's like, well, everyone should have a mission statement. But why have a mission statement? If you don't understand the why you don't have a mission statement, and you don't have a clearly defined mission statement, you can't be just like, we're the company that does the best service. Like, no, okay. Like, how do you make that happen? How are we achieving that every day? What are we doing to make that work?
Yeah.
And if that conversation is not happening, then that's a bad mission statement, or you're not executing that mission statement well, right? And I think it's on the opposite side. I've seen people with like a whole paragraph as their mission statements. Like, that's too much, right? Like, you have to define who you want to be. It's no different than, so many people, like, this doesn't relate to me, but like, I think it hits home with a lot of people. Like, you could be a good father, you could be a poor father. In order to know which one's which, you better know what that's defined as to you. And that's not going to be defined the same way to everyone. But once you've decided what kind of person or what kind of father you want to be, you have to take the actions that are involved in that. And it has to be in your forethought of your mind for that to work and actually have an effect.
Seems like a really great way to summarize this conversation would be for contractors to intentionally sit down and ask themselves, what does success actually look like for me and for my team?
Yeah.
Write it down and strive toward it. Because right now, like you said, it is pretty ambiguous for a lot of people. We want to be the best service, provide the highest quality, friendliest, most reliable, which is what everybody else wants too, right? But they need to sit down and honestly ask themselves, in 10 years, if everything goes perfectly in my business, what does that look like?
Yeah.
And
there's got to be a why too, right? Like, I can't tell you how many businesses, we've helped grow and hit numbers, right? But you walk in the first day and they're like, we want to be a $10 million business. We're at 5 million right now. I'm like, okay, we can get you there 2-3 years. But why 10 million? Like, why 10 million come up in your head? Like, explain to me the thought process to 10 million. Because if you're chasing the money and that's the reason you're doing things, it won't work. That's not realistic. That's not how people work long-term. That's a short-term driver. It doesn't lead to long-term success.
And even though you may be making the 10 million, your individual employees aren't making that 10 million. So they're not going to be motivated by that.
Oh, they don't care how much money that business owner makes, no matter how much they care about him, right? It has to be a team effort, and there has to be a benefit for everybody, right? And a goal towards everyone. Why is 10 million a goal? It can't be so I make more money, because good luck getting people on board with that.
Yeah, nobody's motivated by that. But if it is, say, for example, with COVID, it's built in, right? We want to make sure that the air you breathe is clean. The air you breathe inside your house is 5 to 7 times more polluted than it is outside. And there's never been a more important time for you to have clean air inside your home. Why? Because you're spending twice as much time in your home. So that is a purpose bigger than any one individual built in. Thank you, COVID. All right. Same thing with your system that's running like it's never run before, harder than it's ever run before. Well, now is a great time to get into a new high efficiency system. Why? Because it's running, and it doesn't need to run for that much money. So now we have great purpose built in. So until we build a purpose that is long term, we can run off of this COVID, that thing that's bigger than any one individual. But at some point, you not only need to write down what's important to you and what's important to your team from a core value standpoint, from a principle standpoint, from a truth standpoint, because that's what's going to drive you in that pivotal moment, or you're going to lose that moment. If you don't create a set of core values and a set of truths, a set of principles that you guys adhere to on a regular basis, then you create by default the result. In other words, when you're caught in a moment and you do what's easy, you do what benefits you as opposed to what benefits everybody, as opposed to what's right, guess what? You lose that moment. You may say that you're all about integrity, but if your technician goes to a home and says, hey, there's a cracked heat exchanger, and there's not, okay, that's you losing a moment. And if your technician loses that moment, so do you, because you set the wrong expectation for them. First thing you need to do is look in the mirror and find out who you really are and what you really stand for. And the same holds true with your team. And then you got to decide that no matter what the situation, no matter how difficult it is to make payroll today or this month or next month or in 6 months, there's certain things you're going to do, period, in a moment, as well as things you're not going to do, period, in moments. Those things need to be done.
They're like non-negotiable truths.
Yep.
You got it.
And then I want to throw this, like this is a curveball a little bit, but a lot of people think that your mission statement or how you define yourself needs to be something to the customers. And that's it. It can be that, but that's a USP. That's a unique selling proposition. That is not the same thing. Sometimes, and I found some of the most successful companies, their mission statements have nothing to do with the customer. They have everything to do with the team, with being a great place to work, to providing great customer service, to enjoying work, right? If these are parts of your mission statement, by the way, you will attract great people. And when you attract great people, your customers win in the long term too, right?
Right.
So don't make it feel like you have to be. So many people have this, like, we're an ethical company. We always put the customer first. And that could be part of it, but it doesn't have to be the entire who you are, right?
So what you're saying is a mission statement should really kind of drive the mindsets of all your team. And it has like knock-on effect on the actual service you provide.
Yeah, I mean, mission statements could be, it's up to you who you want to be. If you want to be if you want to have a company where it's an amazing place to work, where everyone comes in happy every single day, and because of that happiness provides an amazing customer experience,
right?
That's a good mission statement. I'm cool with that. That makes sense. As long as you're using that as a reference and a frame to make decisions, you're talking about it, and you're living it, right? Yeah. The last thing you want to do, like we've all seen this before, is like, hey, we're an ethical company, and that same company will go out and they'll deceive customers, right? Like you have to live it.
Yeah, you've got to win that moment. Now, I totally agree with Josh. The mission statement is for the team. It's for employees. In fact, Jim Collins, the guy that wrote Good to Great, and so on and so forth, he says that a mission statement is a tangible goal that you can achieve in 3 to 5 years. He used the example of Nike taking out Reebok back in the 80s or what have you. Reebok was making a move. They were still in market share, just taking over. And so Nike had a very tangible goal that in the next 3 to 5 years, they're going to beat Reebok. Okay, that's a very clear goal. Who was that for? Was that for customers? Not necessarily. It was for Nike employees to motivate them to go out and make something happen. So I totally agree with Josh. It is for the company, and it's got to be tangible. It's got to be real. It's something we can hold on to, something you can absolutely achieve in 3 to 5 years. According to Jim, that a purpose is kind of like a North Star, something that you're always working towards. You may not get there per se, but you're always looking at that North Star, moving towards that North Star. There's also a difference between core values and principles. Zach's really good at explaining the difference between the two, and Zach, feel free to chime in whenever you'd like. But when it comes to core values, it's something that you value, right? What are the specific things that you value? And you need to list what those things are. And not only you, but your team as well. Your team needs to buy into that. So I would suggest getting it 80% there, get your core values 80% where you want them to be, but then introduce it to your team. And the way you introduce it to your team is just say, look, this is a set of core values that I've been working on. It's not 100% there. I need your help. If you guys would work with me together and let's build these core values together, that'd be really, really great. So lastly would be principles, unless there's something you want to jump in on the core values part, Josh.
No. I was just going to make the comment, one of the easiest ways to get people motivated and to buy in is to make them part of the process, right? So I agree with that 100%.
Yeah.
Or make it their idea.
That's even better. I got a little tactic to that.
Josh has got a little tactic. That's a dirty trick too, but we'll save it for the next podcast.
Tricks.
More dirty tricks.
So if I may, let me attempt to summarize what we've discussed here. See if we can bring this home for people who are listening. So number one, the success of your business really is a result of the moments you win every single day. It's those little moments Bergen was talking about that, when added together, ultimately determine what kind of business you build and what kind of team you create. To win more moments, in order to make that a reality, you have to define what success even looks like. What does it mean for you and your team to win the moment? How does that look for your technicians, your CSRs, your leaders, your accountants, everybody on the team? Define what success is and why. Why is that what success looks like for you? And once you have a clear picture of what success looks like for your company, why that's what success looks like for you, then identify the steps, the values, the principles, truths that you need to live by every single day in order to bring that to life. And as you live by those things, as you determine, that's ultimately what it means to win the moment.
Yep. This is a random one. I'm listening to E-Myth again, and I forget exactly. I think it was HP. I don't remember what exactly it was, but at one point HP was a giant. And I could be totally butchering which company this is, but it's like HP Packard, whatever. And it was an incredibly successful company. And they went back to the owner, the original owner, before things started going bad. He actually passed away. And they interviewed him and said, how did you build this gigantic successful company? What was your thought process? What's your secret? And he said, I didn't think about what I wanted to do. I thought about what company I wanted to be 10, 15, 20 years from now and what that looked like. And then I started going back and I started thinking about, what would I have to do to be that company? And I took those mission statement, that thought process, those values, that customer service, and instead of building to that, I just decided that's who we're going to be now, because that's what we need to be that in 20 years. So it's a cool thought process to think like, hey, who do I want to be? Where do I want to be? What do I want to stand for? And then what do I have to do now to achieve that? Right. It's not, a lot of people think like I have to grow into that, and that's not necessarily the case.
Super, super thought-provoking. And I think there's so much more we could do and elaborate on all this good stuff, but we got to save some of our dirty tricks for next time. So I think we're going to wrap it up, guys. And thank you to all our listeners. And I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as we did.
Thank you for listening to Lip Service for Contractors. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Make sure to leave us a review in the App Store and don't forget to share with your friends. Ideas are cheap. Implementation is what separates the winners from the watchers. Go out and implement these ideas. See you on the next episode of Lip Service for Contractors.